Yet in Moscow, there was no statement, no press conference, no acknowledgement of the catastrophe. The Russian Defense Ministry remained silent. Its daily briefing made no reference to the amphibious assault force. Russian state media covered unrelated naval exercises in the Arctic, even as multiple independent monitoring services reported complete communication blackout from the landing group since 3:30 a.m. Behind closed doors, alarm had spread. At GRU headquarters in Moscow, internal communications marked the operation as presumed failed. A leaked intercepted conversation released by resistance groups captured an FSB official stating, "The flotilla is gone. We don't even have black boxes. It's like they anticipated our approach." The Kremlin's worst fear had materialized, a total operational disaster exposed not by NATO satellites or advanced espionage, but by an inexpensive Ukrainian drone and brilliant tactical patience. Statistics compiled by Western analysts were devastating. Over $120 million in Russian assets destroyed in under 3 minutes. The Southern Theater lost a mechanized battalion essential for the Mykolaiv offensive, a 48-hour setback in Russia's northern push due to logistical collapse. Ukrainian officials, meanwhile, made no effort to conceal the operation. At midday, General Vashenko appeared briefly before journalists, stating simply, "When invaders arrive by sea, they should prepare to drown." The world took notice. Pentagon analysts hailed the mission as a textbook example of asymmetric defensive warfare. European publications called it the inlet of doom. But what truly concerned Russian military strategists wasn't the firepower, it was the intelligence breakthrough. Their supposed radar blind spot had been penetrated, not jammed. Ukraine hadn't disrupted it. They had mastered seeing through it. The PD-2 drone's employment of thermal layering and altitude had defeated Russian counterintelligence systems. This meant any future amphibious operation using that approach was now impossible. And worse, the servicemen's remains couldn't be retrieved. Families would receive no caskets, only silence. It wasn't just a tactical defeat, it was a psychological collapse. And for the Kremlin, silence was no longer cover, it was confession. In a conflict dominated by billion-dollar platforms and satellite-guided precision, an upgraded drone costing less than a luxury vehicle had just rewritten the playbook. The PD-2 reconnaissance drone employed in the Black Sea operation was valued at only $30,000. It didn't launch a missile, it wasn't supersonic, it didn't even carry a weapon, but its worth lay in what it observed and how rapidly it communicated. Every 10 seconds, it transmitted real-time thermal images, GPS coordinates, and velocity data directly to the Ukrainian command bunker. While Russian commanders depended on false security and assumed blind spots, Ukraine relied on live intelligence and discipline. That discipline, combined with precision, became lethal. "Don't fire until you can finish it," General Vashenko would later instruct junior officers at a military academy. "You don't need to frighten the enemy, you need to eliminate them." And that's precisely what Ukraine accomplished. The operation employed 3 Buravai launch systems, not cutting-edge artillery, but legacy platforms enhanced with digital targeting, a Ram-2 loitering munition constructed from a modified reconnaissance platform with a 4-kilogram tandem charge, 2 R-360 Neptune missiles originally engineered to sink destroyers, adapted for precision strikes on slow-moving landing craft. None of these systems were revolutionary individually, but synchronized under proper timing and intelligence, they became overwhelmingly lethal. This wasn't simply a victory, it was a declaration that Ukraine could inflict crippling casualties without requiring foreign air support or premium equipment. The expense of the entire ambush, rockets, drones, and missiles combined, was estimated at under $2 million. Meanwhile, Russia suffered over $220 million, dozens of armored vehicles, and more than 300 elite troops in under 3 minutes. Perhaps more significantly, Ukraine didn't just defend territory, they shifted perspective. NATO specialists began referencing the strike in briefings as a template of asymmetric warfare. In the US, former Admiral James Grady observed, "It's not about how powerful your system is, it's about when you deploy it and who's watching the adversary before you engage." The water was peaceful again, but the message was clear. This conflict would not be determined by raw power, it would be determined by intelligence, speed, and the kind of thinking that transforms $30,000 into a strategic tremor. In a war often measured by the quantity of tanks, The price of missiles or the number of formations on a battlefield, Ukraine's ambush on the Black Sea demonstrated something far more disturbing to its adversaries. This is no longer a struggle of strength, but a struggle of intellect. That's all he required. During this period, targeting data went to 3 Buravai missile systems positioned 22 miles inland. Simultaneously, a Ram-2 strike drone was prepared at a nearby military airfield. 2 Neptune anti-ship missiles, modified for hitting boats, were loaded into mobile launch containers hidden under camouflage netting. No costly fighter aircraft, no massive artillery pieces, just a few carefully selected weapons chosen for concealment, velocity, and devastating lethality. The approach was simple: allow Russia to enter the killing zone, then eliminate them entirely. By 3:23 am, all systems were prepared. Russia, still confident in their flawless covert operation, continued moving west. Ukraine had drawn a line, not on maps, but in time. Please support us by clicking like and subscribe. The real carnage is about to begin. Keep watching. At 4:42 am, the Russian formation entered the designated kill zone, an inlet surrounded by high banks and muddy marshes, ideal for absorbing radar signals, but also a natural echo chamber. Within this enclosed area, engine sounds bounced inward, but external noises couldn't penetrate. Unaware they were being monitored, the 6 Russian vessels maintained their precise formation, each ship positioned exactly 40 meters apart to avoid collisions. They were 120 kilometers from their target beach, but now only 17 seconds from Annihilation. At 4:42:13, a single command went out from the Ukrainian war room: engage. The first strike came from land. 3 Buravai rocket batteries concealed in a grain field launched a full salvo of 80mm Tunid missiles designed for area destruction. Each missile carried a high explosive fragmentation warhead capable of penetrating armor and incinerating exposed personnel. The rockets arced skyward, then howled down onto the water in a concentrated pattern. 4 seconds later, the second wave hit. A Ram-2 kamikaze drone, a converted LEA-100 aircraft, plunged from 5,000 feet at a 70-degree attack angle. Its 4-kilogram tandem warhead smashed through the bridge of the lead vessel before detonating, triggering secondary explosions from ammunition stored below. The blast waves hammered the remaining ships, but the assault wasn't over. From 60 kilometers away, 2 R-360 Neptune cruise missiles streaked in low across the waves, maintaining just 15 feet above sea level to avoid detection. Using terrain-following navigation and active radar seekers, they locked onto the heat signatures from the ship engines. 1 missile struck directly amidships of the command vessel. The second slammed into a craft loaded with fuel barrels, creating a fireball that illuminated the entire bay like noon. In less than 150 seconds, the water was churning with flames, smoke, and screams. Russian troops leaped into the icy water only to be killed by shrapnel, waves, or fuel-fed fires. The attack concluded almost as quickly as it started. The result: all 6 vessels sunk, all 24 armored vehicles lost, over 320 Russian personnel either killed or missing. Only 4 survivors were eventually recovered, burned, shocked, and barely alive. What made this strike legendary wasn't just the scale of devastation, it was how precise it was. Ukraine had employed no warplanes, no satellites, and no billion-dollar systems, just a drone, some missiles, clever tactics, and perfect timing. What stings more than defeat? Being too humiliated to acknowledge it. Russia employs silence to conceal profound shame. By 4:47 am, the Black Sea appeared calm again, at least to space observers. 6 ships had vanished beneath the surface. Fuel blazes flickered across the water, charred debris drifted like tombstones, and hundreds of Russian soldiers had simply disappeared. June 29, 2025. Just before the sun came up, 6 Russian Navy ships sailed quietly through black waters heading toward Ukraine. These vessels held dangerous cargo, more than 380 combat troops, 24 heavy fighting machines, and huge amounts of war supplies. Their mission was clear: slip past Ukraine's coastal defenses and start a crushing surprise strike. Russian military bosses believed their plot was perfect. No space satellites had spotted them. No radar systems had picked up their route. Every detail had been checked many times. To the war planners in Moscow, this looked like a foolproof secret operation, hidden forces crossing dangerous waters under darkness. They were totally mistaken. Ukrainian defense leaders had set up a lethal trap that would completely wipe out this Russian assault. What happened next shows that in battle, victory stays uncertain until the very end. Here's this amazing tale. Precisely at 3:14 in the morning, while total blackness covered everything, the Black Sea remained silent until it suddenly erupted. 6 Russian naval craft, designed especially for secret coastal strikes, cut through choppy waters heading west from occupied Crimea. Packed inside these vessels were over 380 Russian combat soldiers, 24 BTR-82A fighting vehicles, and tons of ammunition and bombs. Their destination was a marshy inlet 120 kilometers east of Maliv. Russian scouts had picked this location because radar equipment couldn't monitor it well. Overhead, no spy satellites watched down, no surveillance drones flew around, no radio signals betrayed them. From the Russian commander's perspective, this seemed like flawless preparation, silent, unseen, and set for maximum destruction. Their strategy involved establishing a beach base before sunrise and advancing north with tank backup by 6:00 a.m. Moscow had risked everything on this dangerous gamble. But high above in the cold air, 6,000 meters over the ocean, something observed in total quiet. An unmarked surveillance aircraft, a modified Ukrainian PD-2 reconnaissance drone, floated motionless between air currents. Its thermal equipment tracked heat sources with perfect precision. Just 2 months earlier, technicians had upgraded it with improved communication systems and special stealth coating. At 3:15 a.m., it discovered them. 6 thermal signatures moving in tight formation, displaying heat patterns matching diesel motors and human bodies. The aircraft didn't strike. It didn't even change position. It simply transmitted data. Every 10 seconds, the machine sent encrypted bursts of information, photos, and thermal readings to Ukraine's central command center in Kiev. Each image became sharper than the previous one. The data packets contained timestamps, coordinates, and were verified by land-based radar stations. The invasion had been detected not by space satellites or tracking networks, but by a $30,000 flying machine hiding in plain sight. Russia remained completely unaware. They still thought their covert mission was proceeding flawlessly. But now Ukraine held the advantage of time, and in warfare, timing destroys more efficiently than brute strength. No shots had been fired yet, but the battle had already shifted, and the predators were about to become the prey. If it were your decision, would you strike immediately or wait for the perfect killing zone? Share your opinion in the comments and discover how a Ukrainian commander makes exactly the right call. At 3:16 a.m., just 60 seconds after the first drone transmission, a classified alert sounded inside a reinforced command bunker beneath Kiev. The encrypted video stream from the PD-2 aircraft went directly to a strategy room, where Ukraine's top generals, intelligence officers, and air warfare specialists gathered. Nobody spoke for 10 seconds. Then, General Anatoly Vashenko, commander of the Southern Defense Force, moved forward with his gaze fixed on the display. The Russian ships were exactly where he feared they'd appear, within the weakest section of the coastal defense. If they reached shore, Ukrainian front units in Mykolaiv would be surrounded within hours. "Hold for my command," Vashenko said calmly. "Not yet." The room stared at him in surprise. He pointed toward a narrow channel near the harbor entrance, a natural acoustic dead zone surrounded by rocky cliffs. "They won't detect incoming fire if we engage them there. We wait for 7 minutes." A $30,000 drone, silent, unarmed, and invisible, initiated a sequence of actions that annihilated an entire Russian amphibious force in under 3 minutes. There were no spectacular air raids, no saturation bombing, just timing, intelligence, and precision. The Ukrainian forces didn't require superior firepower. They needed only the discipline to wait and the intelligence to strike at the optimal moment. Russia lost over $220 million in assets, 24 armored vehicles, and hundreds of personnel, not in a prolonged engagement, but in a surgical operation. The sea became their cemetery, and the silence from the Kremlin spoke louder than any news report. For Ukraine, this wasn't simply a triumph. It was a watershed moment, an instant that proved their commanders could outsmart a larger army, that courage and intellect could defeat steel and numbers. And for the world observing, especially those of us who experienced the Cold War, who've witnessed decades of international conflict, this moment should resonate powerfully, because it poses a question no commander can dismiss. What occurs when intelligence becomes more lethal than firepower? What would America do in the same circumstances? Would we wait? Would we strike? Or would we hesitate like Russia did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you believe in the strength of strategy over brute force, consider subscribing. Your support helps us tell these real stories of modern warfare. This wasn't just a battle, it was a statement, and somewhere another drone might already be observing.